Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Please sing along from home if you like. Good morning. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you, Steve.
You're welcome.
You know, the interesting thing about Spiritual Saturday is that you are the only person I get to see. I have no idea how many other people are seeing us. I know Cameron, and in this case, Nate, who is helping him with the audio visual technicalities this morning, are seeing us. Reminds me of the years that I spent doing a weekly radio show with Pastor Don McKenzie and Imam Jamal Rahman. It's been a long time ago, but realizing sitting in the studio, we had no idea if anybody was listening. Cameron is telling us that we have 13 people so far, and they're exactly the people who are supposed to be here. So I would say to those who are here, welcome. I hope that in our experience together, you will feel as I do, you're exactly where you want to be. You're doing exactly what you want to be doing. You're with exactly the people you want to be with. And you are exactly the person you want to be. It's actually a space where those declarations are true. It's called Shabbat. And this is a Spiritual Saturday, which is essentially another name for Shabbat, the Sabbath. Shabbat, of course, is a Hebrew word. The English Sabbath is partly a transliteration of the Hebrew, because there was no other word for it. It's like Shabbat was something that came into the human experience through the consciousness of the early Hebrew community. And this remarkable creation myth, which posited that everything was created in 6 days, and on the seventh day, God had Shabbat. God Shabbated. And normally the word Shabbat is translated as rest, and that has led to a definition of what kind of work is not allowed on Shabbat, and all kinds of rules about proper observance of Shabbat. But behind all that, actually behind all the institutionalized forms of rules and regulations, there's something far deeper that the text is striving to present, and it's a spiritual reality. It's an inclusive reality. It's a universal reality. And another way of looking at the word Shabbat in Hebrew is that it also is a form of the word that means to dwell. And if one takes it that way, then one imagines that the consciousness from which, through which, and in which all creation is always held. That consciousness had the awakening, the awareness of Shabbat, of indwelling, dwelling in, holding everything that had been created, everything that was, all the objects of consciousness. It's very challenging for our minds to get, because we are so limited, but to imagine this one consciousness that holds everything. Everything is in consciousness. And that consciousness just automatically saying yes, automatically loving, automatically allowing, automatically compassionate to everything that's held. And that doesn't mean that everything stays the same. Actually, that's the ground for evolution. Yes is the ground for evolution. No is the ground for becoming stuck. Stuck in a feeling we say no to, stuck in a reality we say no to, rather than acknowledging, not indulging, but acknowledging and allowing. It's just like a feeling, being aware of a feeling, and feelings rise and fall. A thought rises and falls, except when we fight it, except when we want it to go away. And then it's there all the time. So Shabbat is a model of a consciousness that is opening to yes. And in opening to yes, opening to the possibility of an unfolding evolution. And that consciousness is available all the time. Many of you know that in these past years, I've been developing programs and learning from a co-teacher, Tova Zev. And you can kind of get a sense of what we've been doing now by looking at rabbited.com, which is also rabbited.com, which is a whole other story. And I've become much more aware of how consciousness unfolds in a kind of inclusive, accepting way. And our real challenge is to not block it. And not only not to block it, but to make choices about what it is we wish to hold in consciousness. And as we move through this particular spiritual Saturday, you'll get a sense of how that operates at this time of budding, this time of the universe springing forth, flowering. But for now, I invite you just to open to the moment, whatever it is, whatever judgments, whatever feelings, whatever thoughts, whatever sensations. And just allow, we can't help it, but that consciousness that flows through us is holding everything. And with the consciousness that is the indwelling, the Shabbat, just allowing it all to be held. And appreciating that we actually are the one who holds it all. We're just holding it all. And behind it all, the one who is holding it all is outpouring such compassion and such love and such peace. That's called Shabbat. The song is Ma Yafeh Hayom. How beautiful the day. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Maya v'hayom. Shabbat Shalom. Maya v'hayom. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. How beautiful the day. Shabbat Shalom. How beautiful the day. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Maya v'hayom. Shabbat Shalom. Maya v'hayom. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. How beautiful the day. Shabbat Shalom. How beautiful the day. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom.
You know, if we didn't have another hour or so to fill, Steve, we could just stop there and just go, it's Shabbat, you know.
Yeah.
All right. Just go. We'll take that nigun with which we began, the melody without words, and just carry that with us for the rest of the morning.
How beautiful the day, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Ah.
We're, I guess, forecast in the Pacific Northwest. I don't know whether the 13 or so people who are watching at the moment or anybody who sees this program later is joining us from the Pacific Northwest. But here in the area of Seattle and Lynnwood and Bellevue, we're entering into the hottest day of the year, the warmest day of the year. Perhaps the brightest day of the year. And the world is just budding outside. Some of the buds already have expressed themselves as leaves, and I don't know whether I experience this every year or whether I'm seeing it more fully this year. It feels like it, but it's just a wonderment, you know, that the trees can do what they do. You know, that everything, they let go of everything in the fall. They enter what appears to be a dormant period, and then just the life just flows through and sprouts on every branch, you know, just multitude, and everyone, like everyone knows how it's supposed to appear. how that life just springs forth. It's a wonderment, and it's a wonderment of consciousness. It's like, it's hard to imagine that that is just some kind of automatic process. It's hard to imagine that what we're seeing is not life, just one of the grand manifestations of life springing forth. Colors, vibrancy. If one were to visit this planet in the middle of the winter, there would be a clear impression of what was here. What a tree looked like, what a bush looked like. And then comes into the spring and comes into the warming, and all of a sudden, birthing, as if every branch is birthing. Wow. It's really awesome. Earth Day is this coming week, April 22nd. It's Thursday. And I'm just aware of the invitation to celebrate the earth. I'm aware of the invitation to just appreciate the natural wonders of this creation and the deep wisdom, knowing, not the way we know with perhaps these individual minds, but clearly a consciousness that flows through the rhythms of seasons, that knows that the sheddings of fall will be making room for a new life, a new sprouting, a new beauty. And any sadness, any grief of losing a particular foliage is just a rhythm of creation, a rhythm of creation. Often I remind myself that life and death are not opposites. Birth and death are opposites. Life is that consciousness that just flows through multitude of births and deaths and births and deaths, what we perceive as births and deaths. And we live in a wonderment, an awesome reality. And so much of the time our attention is so focused on our own dramas, our own fears, our own competitiveness, our own needs. And that's not bad. But when that focus eclipses our capacity to live into the miracles and the wonders of this dear planet, we wind up engaging in acts which destroy the planet, which clearly we've been doing. Awakening to the awe of the life of this planet, awakening to the budding of this season. It's not just to allow us to feel good. It's not just to allow us to rejoice in new life. It's to encourage us to be more aware. To encourage us to know that actually there's one consciousness, there's one life which expresses through each of us and through everything. One consciousness. one consciousness that in the trees expresses as leaves, as flowers, on bushes as flowers, as leaves, and through each of us in all the myriad ways we are privileged to express that consciousness in the world. As we appreciate the radical springing forth of this season, we're invited to enjoy the view. Coincidentally, Steve has a song called Enjoy the View.
I do. That's true. How could that happen? Oh my goodness. This time of year is when I wrote this song, and about many of the things that Rabbi Ted was talking about. What prompted it was I was traveling a lot a number of years ago, and I remember leaving my sweetheart and waving at the airport or at the driveway or wherever, and as I would travel, I would think, man, I did not look into her eyes as much as I would have liked to. It didn't feel like I had a chance to see her. I didn't take the chance to see her as much as I would have liked in that moment. And then the same thing occurs when I've thought of my kids, wherever they are in the world. And so I think we have the choice to especially in this era of masks, to look into each other's eyes and really take a second and do that. And so that's really what this is about. Let the sun shine, let the dandelions grow, right? Let the hummingbirds hum, turn the ringer off of your phone, let the raindrops, let the frogs croak, let the bees buzz, let the laundry sit and soak. Instead, just take a look into your eyes. Take a good long look or two. There's so much we can set aside, and just enjoy the view. Just enjoy the view. Let the moon rise, let the crickets crick, let the wind howl and blow. You don't need to manage any of it. Let the mercury drop, let those flakes float down. Let it snow deep and drift, let it cover this whole town. Instead, just take a look into your heart. Take a real deep look or two. That's where your world of love resides, where you'll find your own true you. Just enjoy the view. Look into your loved one's eyes. Take a real deep look or two. There's so much we can set aside, and just enjoy the view. You'll be happy if you do. Just enjoy the view.
It's a perfect song not only for springing forth, but for Shabbat. You know, it's like, come, let us enjoy the experience. Come, let us enjoy the view. Come, let us enjoy the beauty. Everything that grows, all the flowers, all the grains, the food that grows, springs forth from seeds. And we really are witnessing the sprouting forth of the early flowers. And I'm reminded of a story of the Balshem Tov, the 18th century master of the good name of God. Rabbi Israel ben Eliezer became known as the Balshem Tov, because of his capacity to open, to that fuller consciousness and to share through expressing that a depth of joy and a depth of love and a depth of compassion that inspired those around him in radical ways. In the 18th century, in Central Europe, as usual, unfortunately, it was not an easy time for the Jewish community. A time of pogroms, a time when every now and then there would be eruptions of violence against the Jewish community. And Jewish scholarship had kind of turned in on itself and withdrawn from a focus on the world, on the outer world. And the Balshem kind of opened that up again, and brought forth an appreciation, a greater appreciation for the wonders of life, the focus on greater joy, the focus on greater celebration, and an awareness that ultimately that celebration and that joy opens inside it. It's not dependent on things being a certain way in the outer world. And the Balshem was, had a community where people came to be with him and to meet with him and to study with him. And from time to time, he would leave there and he would venture out into the more distant areas where Jews were farmers. I know that we might not think of Jews in the Middle Ages or in the 18th century as farmers, but we were. It happened to be a very fertile area, the region of the Carpathian Mountains. And one of those days, the Balshem was out, meeting with people who were tending their fields. And because they were tending their fields and growing crops for the community, they were not able to come to town to meet with him, or they were not able to come to town to join in community prayer. So from time to time, the Balshem would journey out to meet with them. And as he was engaging in one of those trips, he had been meeting with people, and he went over a hill to look at the next valley of farms, and there were plots, where he could see that things were growing and things, were springing forth, perhaps a season just like the one we are in now. But as he looked, there was one field where nothing was growing. I mean, he could see he could see the dirt. And he was curious about it. And as he went about, he went from one little farm to another, and he met with the family that was tending the farm. And he finally got to the land where he had seen nothing growing, and he wondered about it. And there he found the man and his wife um, on their land. The wife was kind of standing by um, their little cabin uh, where they lived, and the man was on his hands and knees, and he was, as the Balshem watched, he was moving slowly down a furrow, and he was uncovering. He would dig down and he would uncover each of the seeds, and he would look at it and kind of clean it off and put it back and cover it up again. And the Balshem looked at him, kind of wondering what he was doing. And the Balshem looked at the man's wife, who was standing there as well, watching, and he looked at her questioningly, and she shrugged her shoulders and said, I've tried to tell him, but he won't listen. And the Balshem immediately knew what she was talking about, and knew, as usual, the woman had wisdom that the man did not. And the Balshem knelt down next to the farmer and said, what are you doing? And the farmer said, I'm making sure that the seeds are okay. And the Balshem said, I don't understand. And the man said, I've got to be very careful that they are, that they are clean and that they are doing okay. And the Balshem said, so you've been doing this since you planted the seeds? And he said, yes, my wife doesn't understand, but I have to be very careful to make sure that the seeds are doing okay. The Balshem said, you must be very tired. Like, you've been doing this from sunrise to sunset every day. You must be exhausted. And the farmer acknowledged, yes, I'm very tired, but I have to make sure that everything's okay. I have to make sure that the seeds are okay. And the Balshem called to the man's wife, and the two of them, the Balshem said, look, you've got to rest. You just have to rest. We'll take care of things. And the man was resistant, but he had the Balshem's energy, his wife's energy, and they finally help the guy stand up, and they walk him into his cabin and put him on the bed. And the Balshem says to him, sleep. You've got to sleep. And the Balshem turned away and took 2 steps back, and then turned back to the man, leaned down, shook him, and said, are you asleep yet? Are you asleep yet? And the man said, no, I'm not asleep yet. And Balshem says, sleep. You've got to sleep. And the Balshem once again turned away, took a couple steps back, turned back to the man, shook him, and said, are you asleep yet? Are you asleep yet? You have to sleep. Well, his wife couldn't count how many times the Balshem did that, but she understood what he was doing. And finally, the Balshem stopped waking the man. And finally, the farmer slept. And the farmer slept. And the farmer slept. The Balshem, of course, had left. His wife, she nestled next to the farmer, and she went to sleep herself. I'm not sure how long that farmer slept. He was very tired. But when he finally awakened, it was with a start, because he realized he hasn't been watching the seeds. And he looked around. He remembered that there had been somebody there who had convinced him to sleep. But he suddenly got very anxious about the seeds. And he leapt out of bed. And his wife watched him as he threw open the door and looked out at the field. Now, at this point in the story, I always wonder, what do you think the farmer saw? I see the seeds are sprouting. I suspect all of you saw that as well. I suspect that there is this notion that the natural world won't do well without us, that somehow we know better, that somehow we've got to take care of things that aren't being taken care of, that somehow we've got to improve on everything. But seeds know how to sprout, but they have to be let alone. They have to be honored, and they have to be watered. They have to be cared for as they open to the radical birthing of what is yearning to express through them. I wonder about the seeds that we have planted. Oh, I don't mean the seeds that we planted in the ground, although those are certainly important. I'm wondering about the seeds that we planted inside. I'm wondering about the seeds we planted inside our consciousness. Because the images, the ideas, the identities, the scenarios, the fears that we experience in our lives are flowerings of seeds. Seeds that in one way or another we have watered with our consciousness. In so many ways, the world in which we find ourselves is an expression of the seeds of consciousness that have been planted and watered, that have been tended, and that express. And we know, what are the seeds? And of course, it's tempting. It's tempting to judge, rather than to simply learn, to be able to see the evidence of where we've been putting our consciousness, whether we meant to do it or whether it happened automatically, whether we haven't actually taken responsibility for choosing where we put our consciousness. We live in a world where we seem to have put our consciousness into separation between us and our planet, separation between us and others, Often separation between us and our highest ideals. Often separation between us and our own uniqueness and our own specialness. As the universe, at least in the Northern Hemisphere, is springing forth, we're invited to look at what's springing forth in our lives, to really consider what we have been watering. Not to find ways of condemning ourselves or judging ourselves, but to make choices about what seeds we would wish to plant, what seeds we would wish to water, what flowering we would like to support in our lives, in our culture, in our world. The universe has seeded us. The universe has seeded us. And the universe waters us with the universal consciousness that allows all life to spring forth. And the universe has given us a remarkable opportunity, capacity, and challenge. Because where we place that consciousness and what we flower in our lives actually is choice, a matter of choice, a matter of focus, a matter of decision. I don't know whether it's like that for a tree and a bush, but it looks like a tree and a bush know exactly what their leaves are supposed to be. And although each leaf and each flower has its own distinctiveness, they also are reflective of the same pattern year after year. And they don't change. A tree doesn't choose, I think I'll do a slightly different pattern this year. We humans seem to be unique in having the capacity to choose the patterns that we would wish to water with the universal nourishment called consciousness. The universe is seeding us, and we have opportunities to seed the reality we experience. The basic truth of all spiritual paths, I would say of all authentic spiritual paths, is that everything is one, and that oneness manifests in the many. We are the many reflecting unique possibilities for the expression of that one. We appear separate on a physical level, yet we share the essential nature of all being. We share the watering of consciousness. We share the nourishment of consciousness. And we're invited to do our seeding and to do our planting, remembering our absolute interconnection, the interconnectedness of all being, remembering the one we are. We express it in Hebrew, Yahu Ha-Elohim. The text is written with the four-letter name that is not pronounced, that one who is Ha-Elohim, the presence of the divine, the presence of consciousness, the presence of the universal expressing within the multitude, within the many. It's a remembering that encourages us to water the seeds we choose with great care. Yahu Ha-Elohim, we say Yah instead of the unpronounceable name. Yah is the pronunciation of the first syllable. Yah expressing that which is beyond name, beyond image, beyond knowing. Recognizing that that is the one who is Elohim, who is the sacred consciousness awakening within each and every one of us as us. Yahu Ha-Elohim.
Yahu Ha-Elohim, Yahu Ha-Elohim, 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 Hu Yah, 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 Hu Yah, Hu Yah.
Thank you, Steve. I invite you to consider the seeds that you've planted. And I invite you to consider the seeds you'd like to plant. And I'd like to tell you the difference between the seeds in the ground and the seeds in consciousness. Because the seeds in consciousness are still connected to the manifestation of those seeds. The seeds are still there because the seeds contain the consciousness that supports that particular manifestation. And because we have the capacity to direct the consciousness we are, we have the ability to take consciousness from seeds we no longer wish to experience, we no longer wish to support, and flow that consciousness into seeds that can spring forth with the kind of life, the kind of joy, the kind of connectedness, the kind of love that we wish to experience and that we wish to share in our world. because we have the capacity to water our seeds with our consciousness. We can withdraw that consciousness from the seeds we no longer wish to maintain. And without the watering of that consciousness, those seeds wither naturally. They receive no nourishment. The nourishment flows where consciousness flows. The nourishment flows where consciousness goes. The nourishment goes where consciousness is allowed to be. So I invite you in these moments to tend to the buddings, the springing forth in your own life and in your own being. You might have something in your own experience that has been budding forth that you would wish to withdraw your consciousness from, that you would wish to allow to be released. Not by pushing away, not by trying, not by demanding, just by withdrawing consciousness, like withdrawing the lifeblood of that reality, of that feeling, of that experience, of that knowing, of that judgment, and choose instead. And it's a practice that requires watering, to plant a seed of the self, the being, the action, the pattern that you would like to express in the world. It's not a matter of finding what's wrong and turning it into what's right. It's a matter of evolving. It's a matter of taking responsibility for seeding your life the way the universe has seeded us. It's taking responsibility for what we choose to nourish with the consciousness that flows through us. So I invite you to take a moment and settle back and let your eyes close. And there might be a reality, there might be a way, there might be a feeling, there might be a knowing, there might be something that you wish to bring forth in your experience, in your life, and in your world. And there might be something that you realize you have seeded and been supporting with consciousness, which needs to be released in order for that new seeding and that new flowering to take place. And this is a practice to notice what has budded forth, notice what has been nourished with the waterings of your consciousness, and to imagine withdrawing that consciousness. There's no harm. It's just easy. It just flows right out because that consciousness now flows into the image, the feeling, the reality that you would wish to replace that old budding, that old growth, that old watering with. Just imagine all the consciousness flowing from what is no longer useful, what is no longer helpful, what is no longer healing, and flowing into the seeding of a feeling you wish to know, of an expression you wish to share, of a reality you wish to live. And flowing consciousness into that as if it's real already. Because in the seed, the entire flowering, the entire budding is already known. Take a moment and live into that seeding, live into that budding, live into that flowering by simply holding it in the watering, the nourishing flow of consciousness. Perhaps seeing it, perhaps hearing it, sensing it. Perhaps living from it, perhaps expressing it, perhaps celebrating it. As that seed sprouts forth, even now in consciousness, it feels real. Then take a gentle breath. Let your eyes open. One way of looking at this is that one might practice watering with the energy of consciousness, this particular feeling, this particular knowing, this particular way of being, for 7 days. So that on the 7th day, the Shabbat, you are able to see it reflecting in the world you experience, in the world you share with others. If we really look at the nature of our experience, we can see how we have tended, usually automatically, to water with our consciousness the realities we have lived, the feelings we have experienced. What a grand adventure. What a grand possibility. To choose to simply take the energy, the nourishment of consciousness from that which no longer serves us. That which no longer serves us as individuals, that which no longer serves us in relationships, that which no longer serves us in our dealings with others, that which no longer serves us in the way we deal with our precious planet. Not to fight it, just to take that nourishing consciousness and flow it into the seedling we would wish to have flower in our experience and in our world. It can appear that this is something that just helps us feel better, or very selfishly experience greater joy in our lives. One of the things that I continue to learn and teach with Tova Zev is that our capacity to focus consciousness on energies of joy and energies of love and energies of compassion and energies of peace actually contribute to the universal consciousness that we all share. We have a responsibility not only to ourselves, but to each other and to all life. It's a remarkable opportunity for responsibility. We are really remarkable beings. You are a remarkable being. And we have incredible opportunities and incredible potential. And at this time of budding, and at this time of leafing, and at this time of flowering, we are reminded of our own process. Usually, the words we're about to share are those that traditionally are prescribed to be the very first words to be said upon awakening in the morning. Modeh ani lefanecha, Ya chai v'kayam. A woman, a feminine, is Moda ani lefanecha, Ya chai v'kayam. It felt right to me to share these words of gratitude, these words of thanksgiving, following the meditation of seeding, nourishing, nurturing, with our consciousness, that which we strive to bring forth in ourselves, through ourselves, with each other and with our world. And to just complete that with gratitude. With gratitude. Ya, again, represents the absolute universal consciousness. And we awaken. We rejoice with incredible gratitude. We are that. We express that in our world. We are budding forth right now.
Modeh ani lefanecha, Ya chai v'kayam. Modeh ani lefanecha, Ya chai v'kayam. Modeh ani lefanecha mode ani lefanecha mode ani lefanecha yachai vekayam mode ani lefanecha yachai vekayam mode ani lefanecha mode ani lefanecha mode ani lefanecha yachai vekayam mode ani lefanecha yachai vekayam mode ani lefanecha mode ani lefanecha.
I love that as a chant. It's like you did it there, Steve, just without the guitar, and just these happen to be words that I sing in the shower every morning. Just aware of an incredible gratitude for the very privilege of being. This is really incredible. To be a home for that universal consciousness. To have an opportunity of choosing the seeds, directing the flowerings, living into. Not to be automatically manipulated or controlled, even though there are so many ways in which I certainly realize that my feelings get grabbed by the news cycles. My fears get raised by the surges of violence in our country and in our world. My anxieties get stimulated by the rampages of COVID, the virus. Oh, there's a lot, particularly at these times, maybe at all times. It just distracts us. It distracts me. And I think one of the real gifts of Shabbat is a specific time to help me remember, a specific day to help us remember. Oh, your Shabbat might be not Saturday, or it might be every day. I mean, it's not a matter of a specific time as much as it's a matter of an event, an awareness, an honoring. Allowing us to have a space daily, many times daily, weekly, where we get to renew, where we get to honor, where we get to practice removing our consciousness from that which we would wish to release, and holding in consciousness that which we wish to actualize, and to know the reality of that watering by feeling that reality is real. It flowers as a seed in the inner world of consciousness so that it can manifest and meet us in the world outside.
Here we are in the springtime of the year. We celebrate the new life and the path that brought us here. The winter of our journeys come and gone. So we're calling in a new light, welcoming the dawn. There's a sense of new hope all around. Maybe peace, maybe somewhere in some war-torn town where the birds return to the trees and smoke no longer lingers in a brand new breeze. Well, let's celebrate and renew. I'll be your loving best friend while we review, and maybe that is all we'll need to do. Let's celebrate and renew. So we savor every cycle of the moon, just stirring up the tides on a stormy afternoon. Our beaches, they stay so strong. We can take in that view as night comes on. And then we'll walk down by the beach and renew. Maybe catch an early star or the rising moon. Well, I think that is all we'll need to do. Walk so closely together, make one heart out of two. Let's walk by the beach and renew. Renew. It'll just be me and you. Renew. And this day will do. This moment is a present. It'll only take a few. Let's walk down the beach and renew. Just hold each other's hearts. Make one out of two. Hold each other's hearts and renew. You can hang on to me. I'll hang on to you. Let's hold each other's hearts and renew.
Thank you, Steve.
You're welcome.
And thank you to all of you who are either with us live or joining us whenever and wherever you are. It's really my privilege to be able to present these spiritual Saturdays once a month here at Unity in Lynnwood. It's a very special place in itself, and I continue to be delighted to be part of the Unity in Lynnwood family. You know, the challenge of any institution is avoiding being grabbed up by the restrictions, the cultural restrictions of any particular institution. And one of the things I particularly respect about the Unity in Lynnwood community, Dr. Richard and Matthew and Nina, is the ongoing capacity to evolve, to awaken to a greater inclusivity, and to celebrate in new ways, to discover new dimensions. But to be welcoming. So it is a particular pleasure for me to participate in this community. And I am very grateful. I'm grateful for Steve Mason, who is just so supportive. I very much enjoy, not only your singing and your playing, Steve, but the energies that you bring. You're a really very, very special being, and I am grateful. And although people can't see him, I'm grateful for Cameron Sullivan and Nate, who will be here next month when Cameron will not be available. We wish Nate good luck dealing with me. Wondering what the order of songs is going to be on any given spiritual Saturday. It's a wonderful opportunity to share. And it's Shabbat. Thank you, Cameron and Nathan. So thank you, everyone, for allowing this to be. Whether you're listening to this live or hearing this on repeat, your donations really allow this to be. And I'm very grateful for you. And I just want to seed with as much consciousness as I can to open to that flow through me and invite that flow through each and every one of you. To feel into, and to nourish, to water the clear reality that we are in this journey together and that we are supporting each other as we journey from strength to strength, from love to love, and from life to life. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. you all.